Okay, Matt, why don't you introduce yourself and what you're going to talk about?
Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Next Level Forestry participants, for being here today. We're going to talk about invasive species management, and as the title says, how to do that in your property, how to report stuff, and kind of how the whole thing works on our perspective from the UW Extension Forestry and some invasive species management um, style knowledge that we're going to pass on to you today. So thanks for coming and thanks for completing your other parts of this class. If you have been doing that, to follow along with the whole process. And if you're here for the first time, consider doing that training with our team here as we kind of lead you through these free seminars and also do the various other components that they would ask you to do. Um, so Matthew Wallrath, but they call me Wally, or Matt Wallrath is my preferred kind of professional thing. And I am the WIFDIN coordinator. I work for the state of Wisconsin, and so I have to speak in acronyms. We can't get anything done. It's just and the feds are the same way. So there'll be some acronyms thrown at you. If I slip up and don't explain it, you can ask about that in the chat, as we mentioned. And so WIFDIN comes from Wisconsin First Detector Network. And so I serve as an outreach specialist with the state. And I have a professor who is a weed scientist and extension specialist. So I'm his right hand man, but I have my own kind of statewide project here that I do. So let's get you some resources. And I put this out here because I just got to speak to the Bad River tribe this morning. You know, I'm a public person that can do the things around the thing, whatever I'm funded to do, and hopefully even beyond that, and keep teaching. So don't be shy. You can reach out if you like. So I mentioned my lab, and this is what was going on here with my world. It's pretty broad, but I do what you likely care about, which is the natural areas, invasive plants. You might have some forestry or pastures, or maybe even alfalfa. But if you see these QR codes pop up over the course of the talk, if you want to point your phone at it, you can. But if you're on your phone, then you can't. But you'll get these slides likely, and it's all recorded, so that'll take you to the sites that I'm talking about as I go through this. So what do we do? I'll let you read that yourself. That is the goal of Lifton. And we say community science these days because it turns out you don't have to be a citizen. If I go to Portugal and want to report invasive species to their team, that's fine. That's community science. That's participatory science. So, and we've been doing this for about 12 years. We're happy to bring you our take on it today. And also, Bonjour from our partners with our tribal advisory council here. Do work with them too. So don't forget about your neighbors and your tribes. And welcome. Greetings. So this is me with less gray hair in the corner. Now back at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I have 2 degrees from Madison, and I'm kind of part of a long line of conservationists here. My grandma studied with Aldo Leopold in the 40s. My mom's a landscape architect, so kind of part of my upbringing to do this work. I've been a landscaper all my life because in order to get that sweet $5 allowance to buy a sci-fi book, I had to move some mulch, mow the lawn, prune some trees. So here I am, 40 plus years later. So yeah, I've done a bit of work at the DNR. I've owned a small business, helped found a conservation corps. I am a commissioner, ex-commissioner of the Land Bank of San Juan County, so you can call me Commissioner Wallrath if you're not into the whole brevity thing. And I've done a lot of volunteer work and leading all types of environmental projects across many different municipalities and public-private sectors and state, county, federal governments. So um, I've seen it go wrong so many times. I'm here to tell you how to do it right, hopefully, and that's why we're in this conversation today because it's more challenging than you might think. Just a reminder that We do live on occupied lands here in Madison, Wisconsin. This is Ho Chunk lands, traditionally. But really importantly, also here are the various different types of we're talking about your forest, and like I am statewide, so it's really hard to say exactly what that would mean to you. And so this is a toolkit kind of talk. Like I want to give you the things that you can then dig in deeper and figure out what it is that you really want with your land. I do believe in a Leopold land ethic of we all do our slice and we take care of what we can, and that will help. And hopefully you see that on your land over time. But as an ecologist, it takes time, it takes patience, and you want to do the best you can because you may not even know if that tree grows someday. So, that's how it is. So here are our kind of our considered areas of the state. So look at yourself, think about maybe your guest home. Do you live in Lake Geneva? And whatever. It's cool. Um, Here we go. This is our DNR page of different types of natural communities. So you can actually find yourself there. Remember, you'll get these slides, and there's some links in there that you can look at later. So you can actually dig into what you want to grow in your forest and in your background. I say this because I do non-local being education as a biologist, so lots of invasive species stuff. But you'd like to know what's native as well. It kind of goes a long way towards the whole process. So we've developed this floristic quality assessment method that you can look into. And we're scientists. I do work for the university, so I'm academic staff. I'm a practitioner, but this is your science. Like, what is your forest really doing? Where do you fit into these tiers of how successful you're doing your restoration, if that's what you want? This is how you can tell. And they have a list of species that in our modern time will tell you what is going on. So we really want this forest health at the end of the day. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning. The idea of having some good trails and I guess protecting little niches of ecology as we can. And it turns out that we know that woody invasive plants are really highly impactful to our process here. And here's why. They do the things that you see in your backyard. Okay, so we're not gonna do this in real life, but if you want to raise your hand in your home office, who has seen more impacted understories in their forest in their life over the course? For me, growing up in Milwaukee, I used to be able to run around and throw mud balls under the trees, and now it looks more like this. So um, that's what we're talking about for our reasons we do this work as well. Just our own selfish love of running around throwing mud at each other. So, as you might imagine, these long-term processes are tough. They don't really help what our native plants and animals want to see over time as they move into the various habits. And maybe you're a fisherman, and now you care about the way that the rivers are being affected. Um, People always ask me this, like, what about the birds? And turns out the birds have been here for many thousands of years without buckthorn or bush honeysuckle, and they're doing probably better in those times. So yeah, they'll be okay. Um, you make your choices for your land as you choose to, and so I'm just trying to give you some options for how to think about this and choose your own personal style. And doing nothing is also an option. So that's your choice. And the truth of these things too is that the native plants and animals are really adapted to each other. And so invasive species or non-local beings can be quite disruptive to the food web and the chain of life that we kind of think of as Wisconsinites. Um, so ginkgo, that plant species, nothing eats it. Oaks, a lot. But we have everyone's favorite species. People say they don't like mosquitoes or ticks. That's also if you have barberry infestations, there's more likely to have ticks in your background environment, as well as they eat the deer, they eat the rodents, they eat the bunnies and whatnot, and then that's not good for our health either. So I have beat Lyme disease myself as a practitioner, so ask me how, but not right now. So what makes the plant invasive is subjective, and you're going to find this term thrown around a fair amount. And I'd like to actually do some important work here to define what I mean by an invasive species, because it's important to know your various uh, words. Words are important. So you see these things here, and then this is actually the NR40 layout of what matters. Is these three things: the economics, the environmental harm, and the harm to human or animal health. And that is who wants to see some boring statuette? Yeah, statuettes. So this is the legal definition of invasive species in Wisconsin. And this was my job for many years. I was part of the DNR doing the definition of this and working with the legal team. So it's across taxa. We have one of the best versions of this in the country. The largest for sure. If that's the best or not, that's your decision. But very comprehensive across all the things from, feral swine, jumping worms, and the insects of the world. And we kind of think of plants here often for forest health, but of course, these things are all interrelated. So if you think about what's causing, harm to yourself, um, besides being green and gold, not my favorite plant, the wild parsnip, will cause these pretty serious burns on your arms, and therefore, that's going to cause harm to human health, and they're not great for our ecology either. The process of defining this is complicated. I am on teams that do this. I help facilitate these conversations with species assessment groups. The idea is that you more or less convene the people that are the experts on these things, and as well as tribal knowledge and maps and whatnot. This book, Vegetation of Wisconsin by Curtis, he looked at the plot marks by county and where the various, actually the surveyors, they would make notes of the floristic species at the time. So if it was there when this book was being published, this is an old book and it's referencing even older information. So that was kind of our cutoff for what's native, but it's subjective. So we do have DNR biologists and other people around the state that stakeholders like naturalists, land managers, nursery organizations, seed companies, things like that will weigh in on what they're seeing to be aggressive and invasive, because those, causing harm to human health. I am an ecologist, so I care about the ecology of Wisconsin, and I think they're related. So, and economic health, which is very broad. So it's a big one. It's called NR40, and yeah, it's a beast. So let's get into the categories. People are always, so when I say this, I'm really serious about, like, if I say invasive species, I mean it meets these requirements. And one of the most important things, it is not native to Wisconsin. So if you call sumac, um, or birch, or jewelweed an invasive species, these of course are very active, and very important and very aggressive. They're pioneers, so you can call that a pioneer species, an aggressive native, if you want. Rudial is another word for things that are just like approaching. That are just in disturbed lands. Rudial species will often appear on the edges of civilization, more prominently. But I save that invasive species tag for things that are not native to Wisconsin, to the best we can tell, and are causing actual problems too. I mean, like, what about your spider plant? I have a spider plant. I have a golden pothos. I got some cactuses. I have a nice little collection of houseplants, but they're not about to escape from my house and destroy Wisconsin's prairies. That's the difference I'm trying to impose here, or your forests, or whatever it is. So this might be review, but I still like to talk about it for people. A lot of people have no idea what I'm talking about with NR40, and it is the legal classwork of Wisconsin. So there are prohibited species, and that is the most serious case that we can think of. There, as you can see, they've taken over your entire neighborhood. This is kudzu, which we don't have. However, if we did, it'd be a problem, and me and my team would be dropping out of helicopters with paintball guns full of herbicide at our own great risk to destroy it theoretically. But we don't have it, so haven't had to do that yet. It's feasible to be controlled. The genie's may be in the bottle, so that's why we have this very um, high priority list of species versus the restricted category here, are for restricted. And so we recommend that you control these things. At the same time, cannot really feasibly eradicate them. And this is garlic mustard everywhere in Wisconsin. So if an insect or a blight takes it out, that's one thing. But like our hand pulling, our current techniques, we don't know how to take care of it. Doesn't mean you shouldn't care about it, but we prioritize for a reason for the things that are still contained. And that part of my talk today is like, how do you do this at all in a statewide process? So let's get you through that. Seek alternatives, as you can see. So if you're a landscaper or a homeowner or land manager, if you need to do ornamental work, you can use native plants, or you can use a variety of plants that are not invasive, that are ornamental or have so far been seen to be pretty cool with our natives. But not that that doesn't mean we get it right all the time, and the seasons change back and forth, and so we just would like you to pay attention to your own land, and if things get out of control and you need help, let us know, or look at our resources. And if you see something you've never seen before that's really aggressive, we rely on you to tell us what's going on. So welcome to the Wisconsin First Detector Network. By coming to this talk, you don't have to join or have our newsletter, but this is what we do. So, a reminder too to clean your gear. It's funny, but as we move stuff around the state, or your trip to Lake Geneva or whatever it is, knock that seed bank off, clean your stuff, and that really goes a long way. So, with that little PSA aside, here's some resources. So on my webpage, we have a bunch of stuff that goes from videos to these really comprehensive fact sheets that we have that are the management of invasive plants in Wisconsin. So my professor has published these many years ago, and this is our kind of go-to thing for if you have a particular plant you want to ID or manage. Look at our resources. We have a bunch of ID slides here. My webpage is down there at the bottom, and you're going to see that's kind of the top of our um, focus here. It's just how to get this knowledge. People talking about it in real time, showing you pictures of stuff, and also those a list of different. I think we have 100 and no, we have 32 management fact sheets that we have created over the years with extensions that have very detailed knowledge, and we'll tell you more about that later as we go. So. Um, More QR codes that'll take you to our various resources. We've been looking at Tree of Heaven as an important part of what we're doing for our management, and it's associated with stuff. So this is an example of we have a management sheet, we have a one-page ID sheet, and that goes a long way towards the whole thing. So um, also you'll see some links here, but if you actually as a forestry person, we really recommend this woodyinvasives.org website. They have really great resources that you can click into, and you can handpick different types of control and like what you care about for your various land and forestry needs, with some pretty cool drop-down versions of things. So check that out on Wiggle, the Woody Invasives of the Great Lakes Collaborative. If you're a forest owner, you might know these species, you might not, depends on where you live. Quick rundown of some very common things we see out there on the landscape. Common buckthorn, glossy buckthorn. We're seeing lots of honeysuckle, barberry. I'm actually not going to get into these, but because you might get to see this later, I'm going to just click through them and show you some slides very briefly about what I mean. These are just some of the main invaders that we're seeing right now. So you're going to see something like this where it has some up close characteristics, usually a pulled back view, and then an occurrence map that's more or less accurate from probably like 5 years ago. So honeysuckle everywhere. It's great for making chicken. If you can't beat it, eat it, as they say. So, um, if you can cut this down and make it into chicken skewers, or it's that's kind of what it's brought here for. It's also quite showy. Common buckthorn and glossy buckthorn, and they're both glossy, but glossy is glossier. So you'll see these lenticels, looks a lot like black cherry. Now, of course, you're asking, well, what about all these mobile apps? So we kind of looked into this. It's a moving target, but I personally am a PlantNet guy because it's free. Picture this. I don't like the paywalls, but there's work being done out of University of Michigan about this in horticultural settings. So you can use stuff on your phone, but use it like a mushroom book. Like you wouldn't go into the woods and pick a mushroom, look at maybe one species or idea on your phone and eat it because that is not a good idea. So it's the same thing. Have books, resources, ask your friends, join a SISMA and or whatever it is. So that's a cooperative invasive species management area. If you have them in your region, they're pretty cool. So the other tools we got going on here, we got this invasive species calendar. This is my website that I run. I run both websites, but this is kind of my program, Wifton, and you'll see it here in the tools. So I'm trying to be like, well, maybe you want to look at non-local beings, invasive species, and say, well, what what am I doing? When am I doing it? And this tool is all about looking at our common invasive species that are NR40 regulated, most likely, and that have these different growing climates that you can look at. So you would use this by selecting maybe a month or maybe a species if you know what it is, or even a life stage. And you can kind of drill down into these various things. And here's your key over here for what kind of the colors mean. And the more full the circle is, the better it is to detect. So that's you can build a list, individually for things you care about that are prohibited or flowering or in May and April, and print that out. And it's a great thing to give your volunteers or think about your own land if you're curious about this kind of work and when you would see stuff. So there you go. That's our kind of drop down menu. Recently created this thing called the we call it the clearinghouse. It's the early detection lists. So the idea is that you can kind of click through these things, and I've asked my fellow extension agents to give me their like top 10, top 15, top six, whatever species they care about that will then give them um, eyes on the ground, early detection for things that are both really impactful or very rare, which is very different categories. So you can click on those links, and it takes you to your plants that you care about. So you'll see calorie repair on there, which is not currently NR40 regulated, but uh, spoiler alert, pro tip, it most likely will be restricted when the new law passes in 2028. So this does get updated. And I always tell the story, if I can, of my mom, who is a landscape architect. And when I got my job with the DNR, I told her that we didn't recommend burning bush anymore. Um, and she was like, oh, or barberry. And she's like, oh wow, like those have such great color. I don't like barberry; it's too prickly. But I've been recommending burning bush for years. And you know, Mom, it's okay. These are new rules. These are new ideas. They're evolving. So we're doing the best we can. That goes in the restricted category. So mandated control is not even there for that versus prohibited stuff. And this is early detection. So yeah, red hailstone is not even on NR40 yet, but it's a big deal. But things like Japanese hops are super prevalent in the Kickapoo region and in the Mississippi Valley, but not in the rest of the state, but are very destructive. So use these as you will, and that goes across a bunch of taxa. That is my job. So including really diseases of plants in particular, and then insects. We kind of focus on stuff that's well, yeah, more plant-based. We kind of have a plant tilt element, but animals and aquatics as well. So maybe you're new to this. I built this new tool here. Also, it's a kind of just a clickable version of my web page. You can kind of skip around with buttons. So if you want to go and check this out, this is kind of how we do this. And there's a video you can show people from my predecessor that's quite well done. and just kind of the narrative of it, and how you do it. So hopefully you can find ways to dig into the website here after this presentation and find resources that you need uh, via the tools page. We're going to focus now on the county lists because this is a statewide program and you are statewide people at the next level. So what do you care about in particular? Uh, this was created as part of this module with help from APHIS, the federal program. But we drilled down a bit into how so this is a web map that it's a Google Maps that you can click on your county and it'll pop up a version of what has been reported in your county for invasive species. And that's a great place to start for what might be in your backyard or forest. If it's been reported nearby, odds are good that it grows there. And if the closer the dot on the map is to you, the closer you might pay attention to that report. Caveat that we don't actually have a dot map. It's very hard to show species that way. But if the list is there and the species is there, then that's kind of where you think about it. You can find that via the tools page once again, and that county invasive plant lists for Wisconsin. So find your county. I mean, we have 72 counties, so very different. What it looks like here is this classification. So we have our scientific name, common name, and then if it's considered to be invasive, there are things on there that are not actually regulated. Um, but if they're going to be regulated, that's an NR40 classification. So we actually have there's a table that I created below the map that will explain the various ways that this works for if it's currently restricted, it's going to be prohibited, and as things change, this can be referenced. Now, caveat that the rule is currently being promulgated into law, and that requires a very long process. They're doing an economic assessment right now, and then it'll go. It's already been DNR species assessment groups going to then the Wisconsin Invasive Species Council, making a recommendation back to the DNR, and then the DNR recommends that to the state legislator, and then that gets passed by the governor. So easy. Like once every 10 years. Actually, it's a very long and complicated process with a lot of input. So you can join, just learn about the next round, and then in 2038, we'll probably have a new one. Uh, so therefore, yeah, do your best. Don't feel too bad about it if you have these things in your species. That's actually, or in your backyard. That's part of this message is, you know, you bring your own energy and ability to your land and to your forests and do what you can and educate people, but also just enjoy and think about the long-term health of your woods. All right. So EdMaps is what makes these lists. And so you'll see the frequency on the far right. And that's how many times has occurred in your county. So this is the whole spreadsheet with all the counties. As of last year, it's about a year old. So luckily, they update themselves via this thing called EdMaps. And so EdMaps, this is the Tree of Heaven list. All maps are wrong, but this one's kind of old. But this is how you can then view the spread of these invasive species. And you can see these things are creeping into Wisconsin, but are very prevalent in other parts of the state. So my lab with Mark Renz and John Zaborski and myself, and we have other experts around the state, we do the verification for this detection system. So if you send a picture of something, odds are that my lab's going to look at it and approve it or not, depending upon the quality of the report. And we really like to share this with landowners and forestry managers because if you can find reports of things, on land that you own or manage or nearby, it really informs what's happening on the landscape. And we need your help to update these maps and make them more accurate all the time. So you can see the benefits here of why we recommend this. It's free to use. It's supported by the University of Georgia, but we ourselves, my accounts are all free, and so will yours be. So check this out. Get an account. If we were in person, I would over like a Jimmy John's or actually probably a cousin sub. I would say, hey, download this app. Let's go out and use it in the afternoon. But it's 12 degrees. I'm in Madison, so not today. Um, looks like this. Pretty easy to use. I'm going to show you the desktop version first. So we have this drop-down menu, and you pick when you saw it, what you saw. This is a real thing that I did. I eradicated this thing called pestilence wart. That's what everyone wants in their backyard. Some Pedicitis hieratus. But yeah, so you can draw a polygon, and it really helps to see precisely like the area you're talking about and the centroid for left and long. And this is with permission from Pete. He's a great guy. Go check out Stonewall Nursery. He was great to work with, and with our help, we eradicated this. So that was a prohibited species that is not there anymore. Um, as I make records, you'll see them. You have like a dashboard in my ed maps, and then all these things are permanent URLs. So they have a photo, a map, information that you enter. You don't have to host it on your Drive or your Flickr account or whatever. So it's a great way to do it. It's also mobile. So there's two flavors. You can have both flavors. It's cool. It's fine. But EdMaps is where to start. EdMaps period. EdMaps Pro is harder to set up, but has some better offline capabilities and some different live views that are distinct from the EdMaps basic app. For both, so there's an app for that. And this is for invasive species, really. I know people love iNaturalist, and that's great, but the verification for that iNaturalist, actually, I input the iNaturalist records into EdMaps when I feel appropriate for prohibited stuff. So you really want my botanist, John Zaborski, looking at your records and verifying it and giving you information about characteristics. Like that's, what we're really doing. So at the University of Georgia, they got photos. It could be from anywhere. They have these live occurrence maps that are kind of heat maps, so you can zoom in and they expand out, and then you can report a species really quickly. I can do this in about 3 minutes with my smartphone. You can also make negative surveys, and this negative survey is going to be a quick overlap. Again, maybe that you take this out, you're going to listen to my voice standing in a forest someday, and this is your walkthrough for how to do this. So it could be negative, it could be a new sighting. You go in there and you're going to pick your species. For negative surveys, you can select multiple species. So this means that if you went out to an area that you thought you would see something and you didn't, you can actually make a polygon for the time you spent, what you say you didn't see. And that's also good science because if that's the edge of where it's occurring, we'd like to know that. If you thought you would see something, it's been eradicated, that's also good information. You cannot submit a photo of nothing. Save and submit. That's how you do it. Upload queue, and then it goes away. But I know it's crunchy, but give it a try. It's quite easy. We're here to help. And edmaps.org has got great resources and videos on their training page. And so this is my goal, a stitch in time before it gets too late and it's been already underneath your house or foundation or parking lot. Like, let's think about what's going on within your forest while you're doing that management right away. So a reminder of some resources here. We got my page, we've got Woody Invasives, and don't be shy. Ask your neighbors, ask your friends, ask us at the Renz Lab Extension. That's why they give us the moderate benefits and lifestyles. So okay, I mentioned spotted lanternfly earlier, and so this is just particularly for forests. This is an upcoming kind of a test species for how we do this work, and it's just not here in Wisconsin yet. Very charismatic, like bright kind of red to pink bugs. So bear with me as we go through this kind of target species. And as an example of if you found this and you wanted to dig in deeper, for any of these species that you cared about, how does this look for us here at Wifton? So this one is a DACCAP species, which is our Department of Agricultural Trade and Consumer Protection. Department of Ag, you can say as well. But it's going to be something that is going to affect vineyards, apple orchards, sort of hardwoods. It's a sapsucker, hop production. So it kind of hits our cherry trees and our things that are kind of an important cultural part of the economic benefit of plants in Wisconsin. Um, and so if you see these things, we'd like you to like send us a report. You can go to slf.wi.gov. All right, jumping around here to another topic for getting into management. This is a new one here, critical cut. I'm going to get more into depth on things, but this is also just kind of cutting edge for us. So I know a lot of people out here uh, just love to hate buckthorn. I'm in that same camp. Here's a brief explanation of this particular technique. So buckthorn shown here, we talked about a little bit earlier. Um, so if we're diving into this version of this is a new tool we're developing for this whole process. So you can see here what it does to our landscapes. It's quite thick. We have this new technique where we cut it in the spring, in the fall, and the spring, and then hopefully kill it by doing kind of these modified critical cuts. So um, this is just kind of exciting new research. University of Minnesota is saying that about 80% of moderate sized buckthorn are dead after 2 years with this, and we're doing science in the lab around this right now. So kind of a tool for the toolkit. People always ask about buckthorn control for forestry. So all you need is this list of probably just hand tools. Maybe for big stuff you want a chainsaw. Um, this is our science that we're doing. We've been kind of looking at it, making sure that we get back to these sites again, and you end up stripping off the sides of the plant, and over time it weakens the plant. So by going back a couple different times, you can really kind of thin these things out without using herbicides. Thanks to my master's student Zach for making this. These are his slides explaining this stuff. So you can see the benefits. Here's some drawbacks. It is pretty intensive to do. So we're working on this ourselves and hoping to have more results over time. So with that, I'm going to move on to another blast of techniques. You're getting kind of the as we say at the lab, the water hose effect of knowledge here. But if you wanted to see how to actually do this stuff, let's get into how to do so. And these are slides from my research specialist, Travis, who's my colleague who does the on the ground work around these things. So um, this is our lab, and we do this, with a team of grad students and staff around the state. Again, we work in that natural area setting. And really, let's talk about quickly um, these different management techniques. There's also a way I'll show you at the end of how to dig into it and what you care about. So once I kind of pique your interest with these different techniques, we can talk about how to find which ones to use at what rate for what plant. Because there are so many different things that people care about. So I want to emphasize that this depends upon the time that you have. So herbicides are very effective, but have off-site problems. Manual control is great, but very time intensive. Hiring a team of goats is great, but also expensive. Having a bunch of goats in your backyard is awesome, but a pain. So, what can you do? Um, if you want to look at density, how steep is it? How desirable do you have? I mean, is it an open field or is it pretty high quality ecologically? All considerations for making a plan. If you can, just pull out of the ground. But we have things like a weed rank that'll help you do that. Or I like a Pickmatic myself. If it says manual control is possible, give it a try. Um, it's super intensive, and then also you're making big holes in the ground, and that means other stuff's going to grow in there that's going to be invasive as well. So it's like that seed bank is right there, so it's often part of overall control. But if you see that one single invasive species out somewhere and you pull it out of the ground, and you're like, "Phew, that's great." You walk around the corner, there's a whole field of it. You're like, oh, okay, so pick your battles. We love Fecon mowing, forestry mowing. That's Fecon is the brand of thing, but it's called forestry mowing, and it's great. Knocks stuff down really, really fast, but again, highly disturbing to the soil. It's on like a bobcat or a skid steer of some kind, and you can crunch a bunch of stuff, make some mulch, but you have to follow up. It's not going to kill most things in one go. You can do goats. We've done some research on this recently. They're expensive. They're very charismatic. People love it. So, if you have the ability, I know some of you out there are thinking like, I've always wanted to have like two or three goats. Go for it. Make some fences. They'll they'll strip what they can reach, as you can see, but they are a bunch of work as well. So you make some good chev though, and it kind of pays for itself in cheese. We also have insects that we can work on. So one very good one is purple loosestrife. There's a very strong biocontrol for that. There's leafy spurge. There's some thoughts that there's a garlic mustard one that's happening, or there's other kind of blight that's happening around it that we have nothing to do with. But that takes a long time and has some potential side effects as well. Fire. Everyone loves prescribed fire. It's great for kind of restoring the Native American version of the land and pushing things back, especially some invasive species. But you have to know your species you care about and if they're fire adapted or not. And some things don't care at all about being burned. So I'll show you these sheets and you can look at yourself for what might be good. But what about really specific fire? So there is this thing called the propane torch, and you can cut the top of the plant off and then just make the crown glow a cherry red until it should be dead. And if you get it, it works pretty well. But it's also time intensive and you're wearing a propane tank on your back. But hey, flamethrowers are fun. I'd say do them all. As many as you can. Think about your plan. Choose the right tools, mix it up, change things over time. It's not a one size fits all for doing forestry management. It really depends upon your ability, your land, your resources, what you care about. So don't be in a rush. We're thinking 7 generations. I say 200 years in the future, 200 years in the past. It's about the same. All right. What about herbicides? Yep. So we talk about them a lot in our lab. It's one of the things that we do. We do research around these things. They can be really, really effective and really very cost effective in particular, but they have a lot of undesirable effects. You can do things off target and you can't use them near water. So I have a aquatic and mosquito permit myself, but yeah, doing that requires some degree of training. Usually, if you want to buy, the classic just tub of glyphosate and go in your backyard, that's legal to do, but do it correctly and be aware that you can do some off-target damage. As we've seen over time here with rings of death around, the tree you want to control, but now nothing grows underneath it. So make sure to wear your gear. Sure to agitate your stuff so it actually works. Don't skip this and be a cowboy. It's poison. So do these things and that's why you have the training because they'll tell you how to do it and explain why it's important. All right, blasting through some techniques. Here we go. So very common. This is our cut surface application. So you have like a big buckthorn or other kind of tree, whatever you want to control. You cut it pretty close to the ground, and then you apply just to the cambium, so just the growing area where it's blue. Otherwise, the heartwood is not going to move any herbicide. So just get that one area, and apply that as soon as possible for sure, so that the plant is still moving water at the time. Um, and yeah, lots of control. You have to drop stuff and chainsaw work and whatnot. It is very effective, however, if you do it according to the product label. So, example of like Old shrubs. Like here's a honeysuckle that got nuked and it's done. Small stuff here and there. You can kind of spray stuff too. And then if you look at our selectivity stuff for our chemicals, um, something to think about, like Arsenal, very, very strong, non-selective, just kind of scorched earth underneath these plants versus Remedy, where it's just selected to a certain species. So if something is recommended to be controlling a very specific uh, family of species, maybe it's broadleafs, maybe it's only grasses. We have one that's like affects parsnip. It's called TerraView that only really affects carrot family for some reason. That's going to be better than just scorched earth because other invasives are going to move back into that area. Technique wise, for volunteers and landowners, instead of buying like a big tank, these buckthorn blasters are really great. Or you can get a backpack sprayer or a small hand sprayer too. Um, Kind of a cool thing for NASMA. They're a nonprofit, and these things are like big no dabbers, and they are really effective for using one bit of herbicide, putting it in there, and they're more or less disposable. And so that means you can actually give them to your friends and neighbors, and it's not a huge investment, and they can do their control too. Or you can put it in a Ziploc bag in your pocket and just do it. I have a friend who rolls around with his bike with a mini chainsaw and a buckthorn blaster. He's a vigilante, arborist, but um, do what you like. All right, other techniques here. We got basil bark. This is a really interesting one I learned about here. Usually a stronger solution, 12 inches up the bark, and it looks like this. So you spray those bottom 12 inches, a foot. You'll see some dye in here, just so you see what you did. It chemically girdles the plant, which means you don't have to actually cut it down. So if you were to do like the cut surface or cut stump I just mentioned, this is a similar effect, and also because you're not cutting it, you're not stimulating any of the regrowth signal from the plant often. So it's pretty effective to girdle a tree this way. But again, that ring of death, or because it's high concentration, can be a concern. So be careful about doing this and do it at the label. More is not more. Do what the label says. You really could do lots of damage if you over apply. So more specific here is the hack and squirt, and sounds what it is. You take a hatchet, you put some holes in a tree. You don't totally girdle the tree because you want it to move that herbicide up and down, and then you put some herbicide in those cuts, and it applies it right away. Also, people always ask, well, can I do this? When can I do this? And you can do a lot of these techniques in winter. Basil barking, hack and squirt. You have to make sure you get the bottom 12 inches, so not in the snow, because of that snowpack that won't let you do it. But it's a great time to get out there and do this because you can walk around the woods, nothing else is growing. Very specific, as long as you know what you're looking at. You can do cut stump, hack and squirt, or basil barking. So what you cannot do is the foliar application because this implies that you're doing it on leaves, the foliar layer. Um, so, do it to the point of runoff, just barely, if you're doing this correctly. Don't spray above your head. This is my boss, Mark. Just barely not spray. Actually, see, I would say this is a stretch. So it happens, but don't get sprayed into the wind. Don't spray into the wind because you'll get it right back in your face, and you don't want that. And you don't want that drift. And it has to be, leafed out and growing. All right, so looking at the effects of that, you want to actually let it resprout and regrow if you're going to do a foliar application. So there is some of that foliar area to make the herbicide go into the roots and kill the tree. Um, and so, again, we have recommendations about this. I'll show you in a minute. All right, and you can kind of see the efficacy, of winter mowing here too. You can kind of hit it twice. It goes a long way. Quick blast. You run with a Zen for your this overly complicated slide. And IPT stands for individual plant treatment. So you can screenshot this later. All right. Now, the moment you really want, you're like, well, I don't care about any of this. I just want, give me the juice, give me the numbers. Well, here we are. So back to my webpage, invasive plant management fact sheets. There it is up on top. So you can click on one of these detailed fact sheets that we have hosted here. and they'll get you into the brass tacks of how to do this. So different techniques that I mentioned earlier, from cut stump, foliar, mechanical, fire, what works from our testing. Also, common names, which is not a recommendation, it's just what we call it at the time as a reference. If there's different formulations, then follow that label. We're not allowed to recommend anything in particular. We're just trying to be helpful. If you can't find it by the chemical name, it has both those things, and they're all listed by chemical name first. Timing, and then also caution and remarks about how to use the herbicide. So here would be one for, how, there it is, what rate, and how effective. So we have things in here that say 50% or less effective. Don't do that. It might help. It probably won't. Sometimes it hurts. So we really want this 70 to 90% to be considered in that second year after treatment to be something we recommend. And as always, follow up, land management, making maps, making a plan is really, really important. So it's not one and done. I know we want to be lazy Americans and have a silver bullet for everything, but it's not a werewolf. Like you gotta keep on working with it. It's a long time process. So scope yourself out, realize the techniques you have at your disposal, your resources, make a plan, and do it, and adapt. All right. So this is basically our fact sheet. So reminder again, we're almost done here. When you got new tractors and equipment, a lot of the stuff moves around through trade and through like agriculture too. So demand clean trucks and tractors when things show up, and you can write it into a contract to make sure it happens. If your forestry mowers and things like that can be, if they're not tended to properly, can be a huge vector for spread. So, be wise about how these things enter your property if you're doing this for the contractor or doing it yourself or borrowing something from your neighbor. Um, they don't move if they're moving farther distances, it's more troubling, but it is a major way things spread is in our treads and our gears. So hopefully our, and demand your municipalities do this too, because a lot of things spread down the highway. And so having people cleaning off their gear is a simple but annoying thing that people just don't do. And things also move by fill. So even if you have like a new home site in your forest, things can move along those lines as well. So when you're making something new, make sure to minimize that disturbance window and replant some awesome native plants for our butterflies and birds and all that stuff. So that's kind of the how. We hope that you can find the web page and check it out. There is on the right-hand side, you can join my newsletter that I do about once a month. That has kind of new tips and tools that we develop, reports from other partner organizations, species alerts for things that are occurring, new detections in the state, some fun stories from our partnerships. So I'd encourage that as well when you're kind of out there building your skill set. Um, Here's some more links for you. I will get Bill a PDF version of this, and these should be clickable. So if your handwriting is not legible from the notes you're diligently taking with your video off, that's okay. And I just want to say thank you for the invite to do this, Johanna, from Bill, and also for Keith to have me on today. I'm passionate about it, and I am a public servant, so don't be shy. I can do these talks for groups that you care about as well around the state, and I'll even show up if you buy donuts. So thanks again, and we have some time for questions.
Yes, we do. Thanks, Matt. Some great stuff there. The At the beginning, you talked a bit about phone apps that you can use to identify plants,
Sure.
and there was a question someone asked. Well, I use the Seek app. Is that a bad one to use? It feels like what you said was don't use it as a lone piece of information. Maybe get
Right.
confirmation from a professional. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that's exactly where I go with this, which is to say, seek really each app is gonna have some success and some difficulties. So Seek, I felt like used to be really, really good and accurate, and then somehow it became less so. So you can use a couple. I guess don't just if you know the plant pretty well and you're getting zoomed in on it, that's great. If it's a common plant. Other thing is that like they're only as smart as the database is. So for really truly rare stuff and prohibited stuff that's not common in the area or widespread, there's not a lot of data on it, so it just means that you really want to kind of double check your references and look, look like the picture that they're showing you, if they're saying why. That was I had an assistant, Maddie, who compiled that list, and that was her experience researching stuff. People love the iPhone, plant button that you can hit in your info. But I don't have an Apple, so I don't have that option. So I have Google and I use Google Lens, but it's more commercial stuff. So it's actually really good for like potted plants and horticultural things, but not really for invasive species quite as much because nobody sells that. So yeah, you use your biases, get a book. Oh, a really great app for local stuff is the Wildflowers of Wisconsin has a mobile application that you can download, and they have a key, so they can actually tell you like color, like flower color, leaf type, pine versus whatever, and even some growth habitat stuff. So for native plants, that's pretty great. So you can kind of see if you have a native plant. Um, I'm always humbled by how much I don't know about what's emerging, and people that have been lived here their whole lives that are really out in the woods all the time, how amazing they are at that. I'm a biologist, so I'm pretty good at learning stuff, but I'm still people that are really, really focused on it all the time for one particular facet. It's humbling. And Wisconsin has a huge diversity with the driftless and the detention zone and the various kind of different ecotypes and soil types that we have here. We have a huge diversity of stuff, and people are always bringing stuff into the state in via the nursery trade and for food and medicine. So keep learning, try a couple apps. Yeah, we're tough on Seek. That's a good point. If you like it, that's fine. If hopefully, yeah, but try just double check your doing just do your homework.
Yeah, that good stuff is you'd mentioned that people can sign up for the Wren's newsletter.
Yes.
What's how do you go about that again? You want to share that?
Oh, yeah, that's going to be if you go to my website to actually if you search Wifton, oh, there wait it, yeah, there we go. Let's see, we got our next last. Yeah, there it is. If you search Wifton, um, on the right hand side, there's a newsletter subscription, like subscribe to my newsletter. So from the homepage, it's on the right, you'll see it. And there's also like a newsletters tab somewhere in the resources. We have all the old newsletters that are also archived. So you can go back and think about my my goofy writing from 2024 or whatever.
It'll be great stuff still, don't worry.
It's pretty
Um,
good. I enjoy it. I'm an outreach specialist. That's what I do. And I like to write, and I steal the best stuff from my colleagues that they write because I can't do better. So why not?
we've got some questions specific about
Sure.
control. One of them,
Okay.
a general one, was people having problems finding companies that can do the remediation. Is there a
hmm
resource that you would point folks to that they can find contractors or something like that, or
My
even
best,
funds to do the work
yeah,
too? Yeah.
my best resource for that is to bribe your grandson. But no, I mean that's the problem, right? They don't want you a critical cut, right? And get them out there with a saw. But that's a hard question. I mean, so I used to own a landscape business, and I was in high demand, and I feel like I could easily make a landscape business and be just slaying stuff all the time. Um, so I can't legally recommend any companies either. The best thing I can recommend is something that is we actually have it hosted on our resources page in Wifton. There's a native plant nursery list. And so I would say the best thing you can do is go to your native plant nursery near you in your region and ask them because they're going to know the region better than I do. Yeah, it's hard because a lot of companies that do this stuff, it's either really expensive or they just want to use herbicides. And I have a lot of friends and companies that I really love, but I'm not going to say them for legal reasons because I am not allowed to. But yeah, go to your native plant nurseries and ask them. Ask your county extension agents as well, so the extension staff and people that work in this world. And also the Wisconsin Arborist Association. They do as far as large scale forestry stuff. They're going to have good resources for that kind of thing too. So it's complicated and it can be really expensive. And yeah, I have to stay within my own bounds as a state employee.
Yeah, we well work closely with local county DNR foresters, and they
Mm,
often keep a list of contractors that they work with on state lands and state properties, and they can help you find either the forester that does that kind of work or contractors that forester might subcontract with to
right.
help do that kind of work. So there's another resource to that list you just mentioned.
Hmm.
How
Yeah, and then
about,
I will
oh, go
say I'll
ahead.
mention what's more. So if you do know you have a SISMA in the region, which
Oh
is
yeah.
the Cooperative Invasive Species Management areas, they're often focused on invasive species, and they might have resources as well, or know people that they could connect you with, or even local knowledge and tools about stuff.
Last
You,
point here,
oh,
Bill,
go
do you
ahead.
mind if I put in something? So in the
Sure.
chat, the Wisconsin DNR also retains a list of Wisconsin restoration contractors that is
Oh, nice.
broken up by the state. So again, just the caveats here, we are not endorsing, recommending any people, but it is a good starting point for contractors. And just as Bill said, just as Matt said, I would highly recommend talk to your forester, talk to other people, do your due diligence before kind of moving forward with a contractor.
Thanks,
And
Keith.
it's a need. If you want to get out there and have a business opportunity, it's a lot of hard work. But the there is a lack of there are more burn days demanded than there are people to do it in the
Oh
state in
yeah.
particular. So it's actually really you get on the list, and you got to be hip with your burn crew to make sure they put it's like it's kind of funny. Like there's just a big demand for it. Even though it is very expensive, it's just the skill and the risk are such that it's yeah, it's there's an unfilled need there.
I've got some specific questions about control measures, but before that, you would put up a quick slide on cleaning equipment,
Oh yeah.
and that pointed to specific areas on a piece of equipment on where to clean or where to look for plants.
Hmm.
I haven't seen a guidance for that or a document. Do you guys have that on your website? How to clean, what to look for, those what kind of
Yeah,
materials
so
to
that's a good note actually for me that I should there is something that I we have I'll double check if that's actually I don't think we actually have posted. But yeah, there's some really great right-of-way stuff. So we do have a trifold version of a right-of-way management stuff. So that thing kind of comes more in the right-of-way and utility and public access stuff. So the Department of Transportation does have best management practices. So to be like a WDOT alphabet soup, WDOTBMP. But Google that and you'll find something from Washington, and that's better than ours in Wisconsin, but they're both pretty decent. And so some of those recommendations came directly from those things that I then interpreted as a kind of picture slide. So those do exist. They can be kind of crunchy. On our website, we do have a right of ways on Wifton, and there's some stuff there that you can check out. That really beautiful tripod that I made back in the day with a graphic designer that has mowing windows recommendations for like 5 species and kind of some overall ideas. But yeah, the DOT does have like a really crunchy, like boring state document with like 6 titles and 6 1 through 9, and then all the stuff that makes the lawyers happy. So dig in.
Great. There was a question about the coldest, the lowest temperatures
Mm,
that you can use herbicides on, and
sure.
what's you? I know it depends on the herbicide, and
It does.
but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, a lot of herbicides are going to be dependent upon if they're oil or water based. And that's going to be so like glyphosates and that class of chemicals are water based. A lot of the other things are like more oil based. So oil doesn't really get cold. So you can really like Garlon, for example, and some other triclopyr things, those can be used in the dead of winter. I mean, like 0 degrees. On the actually on the but it has to be able to flow properly, and so your adjuvants, dyes and whatnot. If you have a highly concentrated oil that you're doing, cut squirt or cut surface application, those go down to at least 0. If things are frozen, if you have a backpack sprayer full of water and glyphosate in the winter, you're not going to do that. That's mostly foliar anyways. Um, but yeah, On the opposite too, I should mention that you can't use herbicides in super hot temperatures. There are volatilization points in which herbicides kind of come out more quickly than they're supposed to, and it doesn't work as well, and it's also hard for your body. So like super hot days or even over pumping things on really hot days can be, if it's over 90 degrees or really windy. But that's part of the class. I recommend, reading the label, looking at it. That's often on those bottles. You peel apart the label, and there's this accordion of stuff that you should care about because it's poison. So good question. Yeah. Again, if you can't see the bottom of the tree with the snow, also you can't do it that way either because you need it for chemical stuff. You need to get right onto that particular area for that's for basil bark in particular.
Another question was about using a burner with a propane burner,
Mhm.
and and I know those can be somewhat effective depending on the species
Right.
you're using them on. Like this particular question asked about its effectiveness before or after pulling a plant.
Mm.
Like I guess it depends if you're getting the whole plant out of the ground or not, or
And
what's your
that's
thoughts?
also related often because the plants that are going to be more effective are the ones that are less a runner based or like a rhizomatous kind of spreader, like a
Mm.
clonal spreader. So the clonal spreaders, if you have to be able to get almost all the root material, so like Japanese knotweed or like a rose or something like that that has these long spreading roots. So you can kill that root crown, but it doesn't care because the roots are going to resprout as rhizomes into new plants. Things that are much more taproot based are kind of delicate that way, which is more like a honeysuckle or like even a buckthorn. Now they do spread by roots to some extent, but they're just not quite as able to regenerate that way. So it really depends upon, so like barberry we say is pretty good to do. So the fire control thing, you think about how it's gonna regrow based upon the effectiveness. But yeah, it doesn't work for everything. It is pretty fun though.
Yes, it is. Pete, there's also a question, someone looking for something to use other than an herbicide, a chemical, and one that's like rock salt is something they threw out. Can I put rock
For
salt
for
down there?
what species, I guess, is always the question.
Buckthorn.
Buckthorn?
Buckthorn. Yeah. Is there safer options? Is vinegar or rock salt was
No, I
something they threw
mean,
out?
I think that critical cut thing I threw in there is maybe the best option, but that's not as far as or just shade. I mean, so it's not a chemical, but one thing that does work for buckthorn in particular is just light exclusion. So people um will swear by this if it works, and some people say it doesn't work, but there's things called buckthorn baggies. A buckthorn baggie is a black contractor bag with a zip tie that you put over the top of a plant. And with buckthorn, if you don't expose any living material that's above ground, excuse me, to the plant, it won't resprout. So you can put a tarp on it or like a coffee can. People use old coffee cans on their stumps and they say it works. So shade, but I'm somewhat dubious about that just as far as it doesn't always work in a little bit of light or a small gap. And plus you're leaving plastic and trash kind of around the woods. So it's kind of dubious. I've done horticultural vinegar to do some stuff. But at that point, yeah, it's like you're broadcasting it, and that's not really going to work. I mean, I like a machete or a brush axe. I like to, I'll do well with like two giant orcish looking like hooked blades and slash stuff, and that's fun. Um, you're not spraying, but you're getting a workout.
I got a terrible question. It's someone that has multiple species, multiple invasive species, and looking for recommendations on how they should prioritize control.
Oh, um, you know,
It's terrible that they have that situation, is what I
yes,
mean.
exactly. No, it's a common thing though. Uh, I often do. It's by density to some extent. So if you have something that's going to be more limited on your property that you can kind of get in charge of. I also say the prohibited versus restricted. I mean, there are probably a bunch of restricted species. Usually forests are just like the dirty dozen of things that are out there. Um, Also, just your own personal aesthetic and preference. So, if you have lots of garlic mustard that's out there and you see it, but then, it's the trees blocking your view that you don't care, that you really bother you, then take out those invasive trees. If you want to walk your forest and you don't want the prickly barberry or multiflora rose, do that first. So think about land use and your personal aesthetic for how you might want to prioritize and closer to your house or not. Um, it can be really hard though. I mean, yeah, and as far as forest health, I guess if you want to, you can think about strategizing what native plants you would want to see, and then what's competing with them the most vigorously, or kind of taking up their niche and work on that. I mean, that's one way to go about it. Yeah, that's the million-dollar question because it's like there's, time and effort and what can you do? So try something, see if it works, and then, go from there.
I like the idea of the basal bark treatment where you don't have to cut down the trees. You can,
Right.
especially if you have a lot of stems, it can save your back tremendously.
Yep.
But like, what do you do with them afterwards? It's that you could just let them die. And there was a
Yeah.
question in here about chest high stumps after a critical cut of buckthorn. You're still left with that dead material on your property that's taking up
You
space.
put a bird box on that thing, or just kick it over. You can kick it over. No, great question. Yeah, so standing dead is fine. I mean, yeah, there's some herbicide in there, but like really, we usually have a less like standing dead and like snagwood in a forest that's managed than we would necessarily want. Um, they do. If a tree falls in the forest and you don't care, well, but no, but that's they're dead. They're fine. And versus, I'll take the 5 foot stump versus the 2 inch pointy spikes that you get from doing it at the ground level. You make punji sticks out of your backyard, So and yeah, it's always a trade-off.
Yeah, it's different with like cut stumps in deep snow. Then you get
Mhm.
in the summer, then you'll have foot high punji sticks, as you say, they have to deal with.
Right.
There's a
Yep.
question about grapevines
Mhm.
that just came out. Is it, that I've seen them, they can be pretty dominating a particular
Sure.
tree. And what's your thoughts on grapevines? I know they're native species, right?
Right. Yeah. So we have a wild grape that's native. This is this came up hunting turkey with my with my uncle on his land. He hates he hates all the grapevines, and he's always like, "Yeah, I'm taking these invasives out." And I was like, Uncle Richard, these are natives, but like that's cool. I'll clear the UTV trail. I'll take a machete. Um, so part of the whole thing about native versus invasives, and people often get this thing with a really common one is uh, wild cucumber. You'll see along
Mm.
the sides of the highways, like crawling up the sides of pine trees and stuff like that, and like on these fence lines, and it looks really, really like, oh my God, like that looks crazy.
Kudzu.
But they're not killing the tree. They're not girdling the tree. So I would spend my time on other stuff, but I mean, yeah, clear your land, clear your forests. They are with increasing carbon dioxide levels, lianas and like other trailing vines are becoming, because of their various habitat like adaptations, are actually becoming more vigorous and stronger because they need more CO2 in their environment than other kind of things is one of their limiting factors. So we're actually seeing around the world a rise in vines, and because they're winning with the higher CO2 levels. So yeah, make your land feel good for yourself. It's not super destructive, and they're a much higher. They're actually really high quality feed for birds. And yeah, they can be a nuisance if they're right in your way for your deer stand, or if they're in the way for my turkey hunting. Then they got to go. But it's that focus, and people get really into like they want to kill. Like I was saying, like maybe they want like this beech or this birch is like climbing into their prairie, or they want to take care of like the Queen Anne's lace, which is not listed but is like not native in their prairie, or your forestry, you want to kill like box elder, for example. Like I like box elder, it's a native plant, but people are like, oh, it's a weedy species. Like you do what you want. I'm not here to judge you like in a negative way for doing land management. Don't ask me where to buy buckthorn seeds. I will actually judge you for that. That was a question I had at Garden Expo once. Some guy was like, "Oh yeah, I see these buckthorns. Seem like a nice fence row tree. You know where I can buy some of them? I was like, no. Here's a landscape alternatives booklet. Like, but you know,
We got some questions about some other plants that are spreading that from a garden
yep.
into the woods. Ivy was given as an example.
Hmm.
What's your thoughts on that kind of control, or what you should do about it, and not worry about it? Or
Oh, it's uh it's over 50%. I know it's well over 50% of species that we consider to be invasive are from people's backyards or even arboretums and nurseries and things like that. So um yeah, the list of NR40 species we talk about it's a snapshot, and it's something that we're seeing that's important in that moment, and that's becoming aggressive, and it's taking over, in order to make that list, it has to be impacting natural areas to some extent. It has to be something that's actually really pretty bad, or economic or human health too. I mean, but they often come hand in hand. But there are things. So I lived on the West Coast for many years. We fought a lot of English ivy because it can survive over winter. The thing about English ivy here is that it's a property thing that it can't really get too widespread quite yet because it's too cold, and that's why it's Ivy League that hangs to the side of a building that's warm. But once it gets out of control and it makes a thick mat, then that's a problem. And I'm hoping that this talk can help you to step into being an ecologist more and be like, well, is this stuff taking over my yard? Is it bad? Yeah, I don't want this replacing the native plants around me. And things like yellow archangel, for example, which is this really beautiful mint that's really aggressive in wet areas. Yeah, it's not even listed here as an invasive, but it's super destructive. And I walked into a riverbank that looks like the upside down. You're like, oh my gosh, like everything is dead and covered in yellow, like with this yellow archangel, like, oh my gosh. And it just rips apart in little shreds in your hands. Yeah, pay attention, and that's I think part of this talk is like using your eyes and your knowledge. Like I will never get to walk your family's land for the past 45 years. I'm only 43, and I'm not in your family, so like we really appreciate you being like, well, that looks really weird. Like, what is that? And maybe it's a new aggressive native species. And you're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And now I have jewelweed I didn't know about, or but yeah, pay attention. It's a very broad question. Ivy in particular, I think, is kind of a thug over time. Yeah.
what's your recommendation if people have questions about individual species? Is like, where would they go to look and see if it is a
Hmm.
problem, or if there's control measures that they should
Yeah.
keep in mind?
So, I mean, NR40 is a great thing for Wisconsin in particular. Um, Actually, EdMaps, is focused on invasive species. So if there's records of it other places, it'll often have it there. And then yeah, the DNR in Wisconsin also has a pretty comprehensive list of good versus bad. That's part of that floristic quality thing I mentioned early on. The higher the floristic quality of a plant, so you have like, like lady slipper orchid is like super high quality and rare. So it has a very high score. Everything that's invasive has a 0. And generally speaking, you know, if it's really a problem, if it's really a thug, someone else is, if it's widespread, someone's probably talking about it. If you have one weird mutant plant that's taking over everything, telling you to feed me and making musicals, like, well, I don't know. Things happen all the time.
Where does now you mentioned EdMaps? I was thinking about that. Is it
Mhm.
most of the submissions to that, is that just by local people, citizens doing it? Is it more professionals that are submitting things? Would you encourage it just about anybody to sign up and post and submit to it?
I do encourage everyone to do it. And the reason why is because I look at those records, and actually really my botanist in my lab does, and he's the one that decides if you're correct or not. So that means, yeah, you can throw us a bunch of clown food and like, I don't care. We're just saying, no, this is wrong, and we'll tell you why. So the being wrong is not that big of a deal. We encourage you to be correct, and we don't want you to put in bad data. But yeah, so historically, it's a lot of high quality stuff that we scoop. We work in partnership with like the DNR for their records, and then also with the USGS, the United States Geological Survey. Um, their records come into EdMaps, And then we have a lot of professionals that will then bulk upload things or that use it as a management tool. So it's meant to be something that's accessible by communities and free to use and very widespread. That being said, a lot of people make really high quality records in there, and some of the earliest detections we get are from there. We actually even pull in iNaturalist records, which is very
Mm.
much, that's more of a crowdsourced verification process. So then we have to
Yes.
re-verify it. I just pulled in 900 purple loosestrife records that I had to go through. Took me a couple hours. I'm really good with that species, so so we definitely want you to use it and think about it and report stuff. I have an option on my end to tell you what is correct or incorrect, or if I need more information or a better picture for your record. So get into it. I'd love to see more records popping up. And it can be really common. And what's also nice is you can draw polygons. So you can make one report that's like the size of your whole property. It says there's like 5% coverage of garlic mustard. That's awesome. We know.
What
So
about privacy? I've heard people worry about their personal information getting
yes,
out there. Yeah.
good question. There is actually a privacy setting on EdMaps in particular. So you can actually make records and click them as private. And then the recommendation is that you make records with permission from landowners. And if it's a private landowner and you don't have permission, um, you're better off not necessarily reporting that. Oh, this is funny. It makes I raise my own hand. Um, so like on a river or like, on like in public, so really the commons areas of like riparian zone next to highways, under bridges, parks, natural spaces, that's always okay. Um, yeah, there is some idea that like you might make a report of somebody that's on their private land, and then it we don't encourage that as well, say.
Well, we're just about done. I appreciate your time here, Matt. Great
Yeah,
presentation. I'll be
thank you.
sharing along with the recording your contact information if folks want to have more specific questions to ask you or ask about some of the programs you talked about. Next week, we're going to talk about monitoring for wildlife. Thanks everyone for showing up and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again, Matt.
This is great. Thanks for the audience, and yeah, please do reach out with some great questions here, and we're happy they're gonna keep me around for a while, hopefully. So drop me an email. Yeah, my office number there does go to my cell phone, so you can call me directly, and I answer all kinds of goofy questions. I'm available for weddings, bar mitzvahs, SISMA meetings, your local county,
Don't
you
promise too
know.
much.
And I know, mostly free. So, but
Thanks
yeah, I
again.
appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thanks.